Hi, I'm Ariam, and these are my favorite books that I read in March of 2025. So let's go from youngest to oldest audience on this one. So first, I'm going to go with Layla by Galia Bernstein. Galia Bernstein is an author illustrator of amazing picture books, and this is a picture book about I believe it's a chimpanzee, a young chimpanzee girl named Layla, who just wants to spend some time alone in the peace and quiet. And first of all, I'm going to mention this. I mentioned this the last time I mentioned Galia Bernstein in my favorite books in February. I'm going to mention it again. Galia Bernstein's illustrations are just so beautiful. They're kind of color pencil watercolor vibes, and I love them so much. I also love this book about just needing some time and space to be alone and that not making you love your family any less. Just needing some peace and quiet. And I love the friend she made while having the peace and quiet. I thought this was a great book with a great message. Then, this is kind of a silly one, but I read Sakura on Sunday by Maricopa Osborne, illustrated by Sal Murdoka. If you don't know, this is a Magic Trios novel. If you don't know what the Magic Trios books are, they're early chapter books about two siblings, Jack and Annie, who find a Magic Trios that can take them back in time to different time periods by pointing at a book. In this one, they go back in time to the, how do you call them in English? World Soccer Series? I don't know. But they go back in time to the Mondial, where Pele played, and I thought it was just, did it inhibited the excitement and the sounds and the colors and everything about soccer and about the Mondial so much, and I loved it so much. Okay. I have one that's a reread. I said I wasn't technically going to do rereads for this. However, this is a bit different because I read this first, not knowing it was the last in a series, and I enjoyed it, but I then read in 2024 the first two in the series, and I reread it in 2025 as the last in the series after having read the first two, and it made it so much better. And that book is How Mirka Caught a Fish by Barry Deutsch. This is part of the Hereville series, which follows an 11-year-old girl named Mirka, who lives in an ultra-Orthodox town, and she just wants to fight dragons and trolls. And like I said, this is basically, you can kind of understand it when you read it alone, but it's really not really. You really need the other two books in the series to really understand the emotional impact. I enjoyed it the first time around because I was like, oh my god, a religious character written by someone who actually understands how to write religious Jewish characters. But the second time around, just the emotional impact hit me so hard. And besides having such a good emotional impact and such a good emotional story woven throughout the 3 volumes, each book has its own funny, crazy plot. Okay, after that, I chose Gabriella by Tessa E. Harris. This is American Girl of the Year of 2017, and basically we follow Gabriella, is who goes to this community center to learn dance, which she really loves. She also has a stutter. When the community center is shut down, she and her friends try to organize is threatened to shut down, she and her friends try to organize to keep it up. And I love this for a lot of reasons. I think one of the main reasons I love this is that it treated kids as kids. And what I mean by that is I'll read like a lot of books of, I've read a few books, not a lot of books, but I've read a few books of this, or it treated the world as realistic. I've read a few books of this kind of thing of like, oh, we need to save X, where where the kids have to fight against the evil people that won't listen to them, but eventually they get to the good people who will listen to the kids, and everybody listens to them, and they save it. And that's not at all what happens there. Well-meaning adults don't listen to them because they want to save them pain, because they don't want them to work too hard, because they're kids, and they want them to spend their summer being kids and not dealing with something they think should be an adult thing. And also, they have to put in actual work to save this community center. They can't just make one speech and everyone chips in and is like, okay. They have to put in actual work to save it, even when they do convince the adults to let them be part of it. Another thing I really liked in here was the story of Gabriella's stutter and basically her standing up for herself. There's basically an arc here where her friend always speaks for her, and she liked that when as a kid, but she's reaching a point now as that she wants to start speaking for herself and not having her friends speak for her all the time. And obviously, that's a really hard thing to say to your friend. Like, I appreciate that you did that for me, but I don't want you to do that anymore, and it's actually kind of hurting my feelings. And yeah, so I think this is such a good book. Okay, now I have two adult books. And I will start with Jinn City by Saad Z. Hossein. So, Jinn City by Saad Z. Hossein is a book that is not for everybody. I will say that. It's definitely not for everybody. This is basically the first chronologically in a series, and it happens in like early 2000s, uh, Delhi, I believe. And we are following this kid who is part of a very rich family. However, he is part of the black sheep part of the family. He lives alone with his father, and his father doesn't really like him. They're very poor, even though the rest of the family is rich. And then some jinn get involved and kidnap him. And basically, the story divides into two parts. Unfortunately, they do never reconnect, which in this book, and it's up to you to feel like if you think in the one of the next books in the series, Cyber Mage, if you really felt like they connected again. I did not. However, I love this book so much. Yes, it's a bit gory. Yes, it's pretty violent, but I loved the characters in here. I loved how awful they were, how flawed, um how they could be awful and yet still choose to do the right thing, or how they could choose to do the wrong thing and still be like technically good. Yeah, I just felt like there wasn't really any one-dimensional character here, except for one character, but which there was a plot twist about that quite annoyed me. But yeah, I like this story. Oh, finally, for one of my favorite books of all time, not just March. Where is it? The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. Listen, I did not know if I was gonna like this, but I was like, it's 5 shekel. I I bought it for 5 shekel. I might as well try it because it's such a famous book and it's from a period of a lot of books that I like. And oh my gosh, yes, I love this book. And let me talk about Marianne in here forever and ever and ever because I love her so much. But what is this about? It's a bit hard to explain. But basically, we have our. Oh, this is an epistolary novel as well. And as well, I was talking about epistolary novel in the February video. This is an epistolary novel. It's a mystery where basically we have our character Walter Hartwright, who was supposedly the main character, but really it's Marianne who's the main character. And he gets this job to go teach art drawing to these two young women, Marianne and her cousin. And right before he leaves London to go there, he encounters a woman in white who says she's escaped from an asylum and asks him to help her finish her escape. And now dressing in all in white was very unusual for the period. Then, when he's at teaching these women to draw, they mention also that when they were growing up, there was a young girl who would always dress only in white. And from there, Walter mostly just disappears and goes off to South America, but Marianne gets quickly embroiled into the center of a ton of machinations, and she basically has to figure out everything and save herself and her cousin and attempt also to save a few other people who are embroiled in this and figure out who's good and who she should save and who's bad and just is making themselves as if she should save them. And I love this book so much, and I really love Marianne. Yeah, so those are my favorite books that I read in March of 2025.